On the Crested Butte Home podcast this week, my guest and I went through a range of topics from some really cool green building techniques involving clay and straw to traveling through South America with his whole family for several months and also transitioning to a full-time job as publisher of backcountry skiing books and maps. Great conversation today with Andy Sovick, and let's get on to the interview. On the Crested Butte Home podcast today, my guest is Andy Sovick. So start by telling us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
All right. Thanks for having me. I grew up in Fort Collins, actually just north of Fort Collins, in the 80s with parents that were kind of back to the landers, like Earth Muffin type folks.
So hippies?
So, yeah, but they don't let themselves be called hippies.
Okay.
They were really just part of like the back to the land movement.
Okay, got it.
And surrounded by ranches and farms at the base of the foothills. It was a pretty idyllic childhood.
Uh-huh.
A lot of time outdoors. We got out skiing, not resort skiing very much. That wasn't until later, as I became an adult, that I got into resort skiing, but a lot of cross-country skiing up on Cameron Pass. Hiking in the summers. As a child, I got way into music, like a band and choir, total music geek.
Okay.
Throughout
Nice.
middle school and high school. That transitioned into like somewhere in my like teenage years, I got way into, became obsessed with becoming a mountain man. Like I wanted to trap squirrels, tan hides, wear a large knife around my belt. I didn't actually have a perfect vision.
Okay.
But it's something like that, like
Yep.
I wanted to go, I guess, maybe further back to the land.
Uh-huh.
My parents did.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a caveman, essentially. I'd never really accomplished those dreams, but I got way obsessed with climbing, kayaking, skiing as a teenager, which is super.
So those are all modern mountain things, but you were also into apparently the, original mountain man.
Well, I was a confused teenager, I guess.
Okay,
Is what I'm really
fair
saying
enough.
is the summary here.
Nice, I like it. Well, going back to mountain, have you done the rendezvous or anything? Have you gotten involved with that?
No, I
Okay.
never really pursued that.
You never
I
pursued
trapped,
it?
I still have yet to trap a squirrel.
Okay. Well, I think you need to go back and do it. We had a really good interview with Barb Peters because she's really into
Cool.
into that too.
Yeah.
But okay, so that was your childhood around Fort Collins, and then what? So what happened next after high school?
After high school, I went to Fort Lewis College in Durango to climb and kayak and to get a degree.
Right.
And I climbed and skied and kayaked a lot.
Yeah.
Even though mountain biking is one of the big things in Durango, it for some reason was inaccessible to me. I had a kayak and a paddle and some fleeces, and kayaking was so accessible down there, and it was amazing. The Animas River. Yeah. And then skiing was huge.
And that's almost when you started to actually do lift serve too, you were saying?
Or we did some lift serve skiing.
Yeah.
I was still very into backcountry skiing and was getting way into it, but just kind of jumping into it, I guess. At that point, I was lucky enough as a senior in high school to have a friend whose name was AJ Linnell, who passed away recently, and he was a Knowles instructor and an Abbey 3 certified guide, and he needed a ski partner. He was 5 years older than I was. Uh-huh. He needed a ski partner, and I wanted so bad to become a rad skier, and I was surrounded by people who didn't. I was the only one in my school who was into this at the time. I think nowadays, in the Front Range, you actually get a lot of kids who are into skiing and mountain biking and things like that, but I was alone. Anyway, so he kind of took me under his wing and was a mentor of sorts for me skiing, and taught me all about it. I basically got an avalanche level 1 and 2 by just skiing with this guy
by
for
having
a full
good
winter.
mentor. Yeah.
Anyway, so that really helped translate into college as I was getting out there and after it, and was still not super wise.
Right.
But I had a really solid base of training, so really fortunate for that.
Yeah.
In the summers, I was building trail and fighting forest fire up in Idaho for the Forest Service.
Oh, nice.
Which was fantastic. Once again, just living out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Building trail. And then as soon as the fire started in the middle of the summer, all the trail crew would go fight fire. which was a great way to help pay for college.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that's actually pretty good money because and you got nowhere to spend the money either, at least from what I understand. So
yeah, and so I majored in political science, Spanish, and sociology. It was a 3-part degree in the humanities.
Okay.
Which certainly did not translate into a career.
Right.
But it did help, guide my day-to-day life, and it really has helped ground me, and it affects everything, including what I do for work.
Well, how'd you get from Durango up here to the Gunnison Valley?
I met Gail, my wife, at Fort Lewis.
Okay.
And after college, this is actually kind of a good metaphor or analogy for our life and our relationship together. She went on to get a master's degree from Fort Lewis. Or she went to get a master's degree in Alaska after she left Fort Lewis.
Okay.
And I went on a large backpacking trip.
Okay.
And I hiked from my front door in Durango to my front door of my house where I grew up in Fort Collins. It was
cool.
like a 9-week backpacking trip across the state.
Okay.
It was awesome.
Did you take the Colorado Trail for most of that, or no?
Parts of it. I kind of put together my own.
It's your own. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Which was not. It was actually kind of funny.
It's the Andy Trail.
Yeah,
Got it.
It's a digression, but so I left. It was May, and I left my house on 4th Avenue in Durango with skis on my back. They were, remember Research Dynamics Coyotes?
Yeah, of course.
Big, heavy ski, big, 200 centimeters.
Yep.
Volet 3-pin bindings, 3-pin cable bindings. Mm-hmm. Leather boots. They were all on my back, and I was in a tank top and shorts, and hiked out Durango, out Horse Gulch, over Raider Ridge, and then hiked all the way up Missionary Ridge towards like a Mountain View crest. This is like the southern boundary of the Weminuche.
Sure.
Had to go through that awful transition zone of slushy snow.
Sure.
Where I finally put my skis on, and
Sure.
I skied to Lake City, which was awesome. But I was like a total. I mean, I would do this so different if I could do it over again, but I probably won't do it over again. And then ditched my skis when I got to the Cochetoba Hills.
Where'd you ditch them?
In Gunnison County. With someone who came and did a resupply. I think it was my folks came and gave me a resupply of food.
Nice.
And, but that's where the snow ended.
Yep. And then you just got to hike and make it a little simpler at least.
A lot lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was carrying heavy. I was not doing the ultralight backpacking through. I think my pack weighed like 90 pounds or something stupid. It was awful.
Oh.
So I was glad to shed that and like check that one off the list. And so Gail was in Alaska. Yeah. And so she was still getting her master's degree, and I was ski bumming in Idaho. I took another job after I was doing firefighting and trail crew. I took an apprenticeship under a barnwright in Michigan. This was working on barns, like 200 to 400-year-old barns in Michigan. So post and beam, timber frame, beautiful. All the barnwood that we see going up on all the second homes here are from a lot of these barns. And we would sometimes take them down and sell them. We would take them down, we'd move them, we'd put them back up, we'd straighten them, fix them, anything to do with old barns. And so I learned all about old world timber frame techniques. That's when I got into that. Okay. And it really inspired me. I loved it. Anyway, so I did that for money a little bit and then went ski bumming in the Tetons. During that time, Gail finished her master's program, and she got a job offer at the Crested Butte Academy. And so we decided to move here together, and I still remember driving in for the first time into Crested Butte over Kettler Pass. Actually, it wasn't the first time I was in Crested Butte. The first time was in like maybe 02 or 03. I came for the Telemark free ski competition to compete. Got a like 36th place or something like that.
Yeah, nice. That's pretty good.
yeah, pretty good. I think I still remember. I didn't know them at the time, but I remember like Angie Hornbrook and Ross Matlock were the judges, and so they gave me 36th place because they didn't like me double pole planting down the entire. It wasn't all that good, but anyway, so I'd been here for that, but it was like in March. It wasn't like a super inspiring. Like Crested Butte's amazing. It was during a low year. So. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I still remember driving down over Kettler Pass and dropping into town July. And we're coming here to look for a house to rent so that she can start her job at the academy. Yeah. We drove down into town and parked at the four-way stop. This was in 2005. And there was a concert in the park. Everyone was out on the lawn. We took our Frisbee out, or throwing Frisbee, there's like a rainbow, like Crested Butte, like a typical afternoon. But it was like
someone walked by and handed you a beer too. Or
exactly, yeah. Like people like joined our frisbee game, and we just looked at each other and we were like, "Yep, this is it.
This is
We're
pretty
here.
good.
Like this is we'll probably never leave." That's really how we felt. So. But yeah, so that was 2005. She came and worked in the academy, and I just started working in carpentry. It was a skill that I grew up with. My dad was a contractor.
Oh, okay. So when you did the barn thing, you already had some knowledge.
I already had construction. I mean, it was mainly doing like grunt labor for my dad, but still being surrounded by carpentry and helping with this and doing that.
Right.
And it just
still picking up on it. I'm sure.
I come from a long line of carpenters, so it's somewhere. It's deep in there.
Yeah.
Can't shake it.
Nice. Nice. So you were doing carpentry, and that kind of ended up, as far as I know, you started getting into green building too, right?
Yeah,
different types of that.
So when I showed up, I looked in the job ads, in the want ads, in the paper, and saw that Green Robin Builders was hiring. They're not around anymore, but it said specializing in environmentally friendly building techniques and timber frame. And I was like, no way, that's exactly what I want to do. And I called them, asked for a job, gave me a job right on the spot.
Yeah.
And we actually weren't doing any timber framing or like natural eco building, but certainly paying attention to efficiency and modern building techniques that could really help seal the place up and all that stuff. Later on, we would get into some really cool clay, straw, timber frame, super groovy houses. Yeah. But right then and there, it was kind of working as a carpenter for them.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I got into green building, or whatever you want to call it, eco building, green building, alternative building. When Don Smith, who owned Green Robin Builders at the time, he got into what we call eco nests.
Okay.
So the eco nest is actually like a patented term. And it's referring to this particular design done by some people who live in Oregon now, and it's a timber frame with clay straw infill. So you do this mix of straw and clay and water. Okay. And you pound it into forms, just like you would pour concrete into forms. You stomp it into forms, literally stomp it with your feet. Yeah. Like you're smashing grapes. Okay. And you fill up those forms with clay and straw. And then enclose it with plaster. Okay. And you've got this really awesome insulation. You've got an amazing thermal mass, ability to store heat and then release it during the evenings
from the sun. Okay.
From the sun, and it also has this breathability, this wicking property to it. So you can really it'll actually store. So it has a wicking property, but it also has what's called hygrate capacity, which is the ability to absorb moisture from anywhere. So a log, for example, has hygrate capacity. Log homes have awesome hygrate capacity. They'll actually absorb the water in your house. There's tons of water in your house, right? Right. You're breathing, you're cooking, you're showering.
Your plants, whatever,
Plants, all sorts of stuff. And that's going into your walls, whether you like it or not. Sure. And so the idea to be able to absorb it is pretty cool. And then the cool thing about the eco nests, and log homes for that matter, will breathe it back once the air interchange is different. Once you have drier air and wetter logs or walls, it'll give it back in a nice even way, so you have a more regulated atmosphere. So when you walk into these eco nests, it's a feeling like nothing else. It's just you get it right away. You don't need the science necessarily to prove it. It's just a really nice feeling atmosphere 24 hours a day. So I got way into that, and it came along with Japanese timber framing, which is just kind of like a discipline of timber framing that I got really into, like compared to those barns in the Midwest in Michigan. That's like an English and Dutch primarily timber frame technique, and then Japanese has their own ways. And once you get into these things, it's
like the ways that they're attaching the different pieces, or how's it different?
I mean, just about everything. It's still you're working with rectangular pieces of wood. Sure. So in that sense, it's the same, and it's posts and beams. But the joinery, the way you carve the joints, the way you kind of think of a joint, and the way that a house works. Yeah. I mean, you can get super wooey with it, but at the end of the day, the joints are a little bit different.
So why, you've kind of mentioned this, and I will agree with you. I've been in enough straw bale homes to even just a straw bale home kind of does the same thing too. Yeah, totally. There's a different feel, which is, I wish there was a way to explain it, but that's all you can say is it just feels a little different when you walk into a house like that.
It's just like telemark boots, leather telemarks. It's like that feel.
Yep. Well, what's so then? Why doesn't everybody do it that way then?
That's a good question. It's not as efficient. Bottom line, we're still everyone wants to kind of cut the costs on the
efficient. But they're efficient environmentally, right? But not efficient.
Oh, sure, and they can be energy. Yeah, the building process is less efficient. Yeah. Yes, your cost per square foot is almost guaranteed to be higher.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily going to cut down on your bills.
Okay.
Because we can build super tight insulated houses these days that also have the ability to breathe with mechanical ventilation.
I was going to say that's a crazy part for people who don't know the building process. When you spray foam all this stuff, it's like you end up putting basically a bathroom fan that runs 24/7 in most of these super tight new homes, which is kind of crazy to think about, but otherwise they don't work.
Yeah, exactly.
They do need to breathe. Houses need to breathe.
Yeah, we've learned when remodeling houses that were built fairly tight without any mechanical ventilation that, like we said, that water is going into the walls. Yeah. And it's doing bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just like coming back out into the room and being nice. It's dripping down the inside of your drywall into your insulation. It's rotting, it's molding, and so that's why we have that. Tight houses is good.
Yeah.
You need that good mechanical breathability unless you do these clay straw houses. Yeah. And unfortunately, it is what it is. Even if you build a new clay straw house in Gunnison County, you still have to give it mechanical ventilation because the code is with the new residents you have to have mechanical ventilation. Right. And that's fine. I mean, it senses when it's time to put new fresh air in, and it does. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I really did like, and I really was inspired by the EcoNest, and I still am. I'm not doing it right now. By the EcoNest philosophy that we don't want to live in a box with mechanical ventilation. I don't want to live in a refrigerator. Yeah. Basically, like something that's just an insulated case. I want to live really connected to nature. I want to feel like I feel when I'm outside. Yeah. On a nice day.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good way to put it.
They're wonderful feeling houses. I'd certainly aspire to having one myself.
Yeah.
Hopefully someday I do.
Yeah. Well, you took a super cool video of one that you built, so I'll make sure to put that in the show notes.
Oh, yeah, cool.
I mean, that was you did the whole thing start to finish, right? If I'm remembering it correctly.
I did a few. Okay. You mean like shot the whole thing with the camera?
Yeah,
I did a couple when we were doing those clay straw houses. Yeah. I did a couple shoots from start to finish. One was up at Nicholson Lake area.
I think it's the one that was closer to the Gas Cafe. I think was the one I saw.
Yeah, that one was tons of fun. That was right downtown here. Yeah, and just like one of a kind house, clay straw walls. Yeah, I shot that from start to finish, and then we did a few in Paonia. Oh, cool. And I shot those as well.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely link at least one of those. People should check that out because it was
they're cool. Really fun videos. One of them is I just saw my YouTube channel recently. I kind of I made them and put them out there, and it was mainly for the homeowners, Yeah. And I just loved doing that time lapse photography for a while. And so it was just I put it out there and it was done. And I saw one of them has 20,000 views or something, which nice. YouTube standards I guess is small, but still.
No, I
think last time I saw it there was 20 views. So I was like, whoa. Maybe still in Russian.
Must have gotten linked somewhere that you didn't know about, but very cool. Very cool. Yeah. In the Crested Butte Real Estate Minute, I am recording this episode just a few days after Crested Butte Mountain Resort closed early due to coronavirus, and realistically, all of Crested Butte and Gunnison County have closed down as well. There will be a lot of people who could use some help, so consider buying a gift certificate or donating to a local charity if you're listening to this, and hopefully we will all get through this quickly. This is Frank Kinsella. My number is 970-596-7990. Feel free to call me or text me about anything real estate related or ways that you can help, and I will be happy to set you in a good direction. And you can always visit CrestedButteRealEstateAgent.com as well. So what do you do now for work?
So right now I'm just publishing guidebooks, maps, and the digital version of those.
And how did that get started?
2012, I set out to make one for Crested Butte. I had been skiing around Crested Butte a lot and have kind of a categorizing brain. I'd say I just really wanted to, I was mapping it out in my head, the area, right? Just because it's kind of a good practice to really try to understand and visualize your terrain, understand its aspects, its elevations, and I loved understanding the names of the runs, so I got really obsessed with learning the names that people were calling them, trying to dig into that and find it. And at the time, there was no vision of and I want to make something someday. It's just how I work. Yeah, I guess how my mind works. I got inspired by that. And then when I had been ski bumming the Tetons, like I talked about earlier, there's a ski atlas in the Tetons that's just a photographic atlas of, it's mostly the Teton Pass area.
Sure.
It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, I've seen that.
On everyone's coffee table.
Yeah.
It's just aerial photos with names of the spots, right?
Yeah.
There's no guidance of like how to get there, where it is and relative to anything else. There's not even like an aspect or elevation. It's like, this is Edelweiss.
Right.
This is unskiable. This is gloriable, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. We just like as ski bums, we just stared at that.
Yeah, just stare at it, memorize it all.
And so around here, and it was also very useful. Like I believed that it helped keep me safe and like really understand the terrain that we were going into. Sometimes you're approaching it from the other side, you're dropping in, or it's cloudy, and it's nice that you have that picture in your head.
Well, it's just like the extremes guide too for even the ski area here.
Exactly, exactly like that. Yeah. And so they're little pieces of inspiration throughout my life, I'd say. And a good college friend of mine named Brady Johnston made a ski atlas that's not too different from mine are these days for the Targhee backcountry.
Okay.
It's out of Driggs, Idaho. So it's Tetons, but on the west side of the Tetons. Amazing ski terrain there. It's my favorite place to ski in the Tetons. More snow than Jackson. Amazing. And he made a little atlas, and it had a little bit more info. It had aerial photos, and then it also had a list of runs to the side, and a little line where the general skin track would be, and not like an explanation of that skin track or where it came from or anything like that. So it was kind of a little bit of a graduation from it, right? But it was portable. It was just 8.5 by 5.5 inches, so it's something you could put in your pocket.
And the skin track is the ascent route for people who don't ski like you and me. But anyway.
Thank you. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So the uphill route and then the downhill routes. And he didn't like draw the routes in. He would just put icons on the aerial photo where the general route was, right? Because you don't actually ski a line per se and call that the run. A named run in the backcountry usually refers to anywhere from a 100-foot wide swath to a 800, like Red Lady Bowl is
it's a
1,000 feet wide,
giant ball. Yeah.
So the run can be general, which is why he just put an icon and then a difficulty rating. And I was like, that is what I want to make for Crested Butte. And the idea wasn't like, and that'll make me a lot of money. It was just suddenly something I wanted to make. We've been talking about how I love making things. I love seeing a project through. Visualizing a time-lapse project, visualizing a finished house and construction. Art, photos, all sorts of stuff. And so this was just suddenly something that got planted in my head and I couldn't resist doing. I really wanted to do it. And of course, I could have made one for myself, which I did. I had a bunch of photos of runs that I used myself all the time. I think a lot of skiers do. When you're on Conies, you take a picture of Schuylkill because there's this run over there that you never can quite figure out how to get on top of it when you're starting out. You know? So I had those, but I wanted to actually make some good professional quality photos. So we took a flight in an airplane in a Cessna one day on a bluebird day after a snowstorm, me and Chris Miller, and flew all the way around the Elk Mountains, buzzed the Maroon Bells, and I'll never forget that day. It was just incredible. I hadn't flown a Cessna ever before, but to fly up against all these mountains so low.
And actually have some control over it. Like, hey, could you go back there again if you want?
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Circle around again. Let's go circle Pyramid for fun. It was the time of my life. I loved it. And so that was really fun. But then we had like 2,500 photos collectively between the two of us for what turned out to be like a 30-page guidebook. And so at first it was just that. It was aerial photos with a little bit of explanation of the runs, right? And I saddle stitched it, meaning I put staples in it, and sold it for I think $18 at local shops. And that was it. I was like, cool, project done. I finished another thing that I wanted to make. Continue with carpentry, what I'm doing, what's working really well. And then a friend of mine down in Durango, where we had skied obsessively for 5 years, was like, you should make one for the San Juans. We have all those photos still, and you have that categorized in your brain. I was like, oh, well, that flight was fun. And so I did that. And then I was like, well, that's all the terrain I know. That's all I can't. There's no more terrain for me. And that's when I got a phone call from Matt Schonwald, who's a veteran guide in Seattle, Washington, who heard through Tom Murphy, the director of ARI, that's the American Avalanche Institute of Research and Education.
I'm like, I can't remember exactly what it is, but
Avalanche Education School. Tom had told Matt Schonwald about what I do, and Matt was saying he really wanted to make a guidebook for his guiding area. So he called me and said, I want to make a guidebook for Snoqualmie Pass, Washington. Will you be my publisher? And I was like, Well, I'm not a publisher.
But I guess I am.
I had never known what a publisher was, really. I mean, I knew publishing companies make books, but I wasn't really like a company making books. I was a carpenter who had sent a couple of PDFs to a printer. And I explained so much to him, and he said, well, I think, and you distribute them, right? I was like, well, I sell them in stores. And he's like, you have a website that sells them, right? I said, yeah.
Sounds like you're a publisher.
He's like, you're a publisher. And I was like, really? And so that is basically the day that I was like, I think I am a publisher, and maybe I'm onto something. And I started getting other phone calls from other guides.
Right, so the calls were coming to you, not the other way around.
They always have. I've never gone sought another guidebook author.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's when I became a publisher, was that day.
Yeah.
And since then, I've obviously taken it much more seriously, and it was just this last year that I said, I can't do carpentry anymore. I can't be multitasking. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of books in the gauntlet, and it takes a lot of work to get one through now. Now they're, of course, a little bit more refined. We spend a lot more time vetting them and their runs and getting reviews, and we're making one for avalanche rescue now. It's a field guide for avalanche rescue. Okay. Which is a really cool book written by another author. I'm just the publisher. I'm directing traffic and getting all the things put together. Yeah. And then we'll be printing and distributing it as well.
Awesome. How many titles are there in the lineup now?
There's 9 published. So there's 9 books published, and there's 4 maps. Okay. And then everything is in app form as well. Okay. Yeah. So
when you buy the book, you get the app automatically, or
they all sell separately?
Okay.
Yeah, they're all different products. So some people find all 3 products handy. Some people just want a map, a nice topo map of the area, where they can refer to it and go out on a ski, have it in the bottom of their pack just for good emergency tool. It's one of the best emergency tools out there, you know? Yeah. And other people prefer a book with aerial photos. And a lot of people these days just want it on their phone, and we have to hope that the batteries are going to stay good and that they can see it. Yeah. But I actually really have grown to love the app side of it because it's a great planning tool. I don't use it so much in the field, but I love using it for planning. You can zoom in on the photos. You can really spend a lot of time filtering out runs on this app, which is really fun.
Oh, nice.
So you can do the same thing that mountain guides can do, which is, well, I shouldn't say the same thing as mountain guides can do, but where mountain guides will take a run list of their guiding area, and they'll say, here's what the avalanche conditions are for the day. Here's the avalanche forecast. Yeah. What terrain is closed for the day? What is not going to work based on the forecast? If it's considerable above tree line, northeast facing aspects, that's simple. Any run that's on northeast facing aspects above tree line is closed for the day. It's harder for the user to do that. A lot of people like you and me can kind of do that already in our minds. We know what not to ski for the day. We don't have to necessarily go through a list.
Sure, especially with an area you're familiar with.
Exactly, yeah. But the app is one more tool to help kind of cross-check that human factor, right? That factor that is our poor decision-making process. Help you remember that there are certain runs that just shouldn't be skied today, and you can figure out what those are. Yeah. So that's one of the features I like about that. But anyway, there's 3 products. Some people like them all. I do. Yeah. But a lot of people just prefer a book or a map or just the digital version. So
I'm kind of curious, and obviously not all the listeners might know, but I'm also a guidebook author. My guidebook is totally different because this is a big, thick thing, and yours are like more of a simple thing. But how do you feel about, quote unquote, giving up stashes, or have you gotten much flack or that kind of thing? I'm just kind of curious about that part of it.
Yeah, and I get the question a lot. And by the way, I love your guidebook. I use it regularly, and I love looking through it. And cool. It is a good guidebook. But it is very different, right? It's a huge
totally different thing. You're not probably going to carry ours with you actually in your pack, but yours you will. So it's totally different.
Yeah, and I've always thought they're a good complement. There's a lot of guidebooks like it, and I've always thought them to be, like, once again, it's more tools. These are just small tools that help you plan and execute a tour safely. Sure. So get them all. But to answer your question about sharing stashes, it's something I think about a lot, and that would be like the short answer. I think about it a lot, and I philosophize about it a lot. Yeah. And the use of the backcountry is something that concerns me, and I think about. And so that would be the short answer. The long answer is I believe that using secrecy as a policy for backcountry skiing is like using abstinence as a policy for teenage education. It's generally ineffective. Yeah. In some cases, it is effective, and I'll tell you, Frank, there's like a few spots where guides have approached me and said, I'd like to write a book for my area. And we'll kind of go over the conversation of that particular spot and how many people know about it and how many people from out of town come and use it. And sometimes we've discovered that secrecy for that spot is actually kind of working, that people seem to drive right by it or pass it up and not know that there's some really nice low-angle skiing in this particular spot. And so we go through that, and there's even certain runs and areas in Crested Butte book even. I have spots that I've intentionally left out because I feel like secrecy is kind of working. Like there's a lot of people that just don't go to these spots. So we think about that a lot. So, and in that sense, I guess abstinence can also help some people. But by and large, it's not a good policy. My feeling is that we shouldn't be talking, the conversation is old about asking whether we should or should not have guidebooks. We have a lot of guidebooks. We have a lot of ways of sharing the secrets of the backcountry. There's tons of websites now. People are spraying it all over Facebook. Technology and education is getting to unprecedented levels. What is the best way to create a guidebook? What is the best way to help people understand the backcountry ski terrain? That to me is the question we should all be asking. And I think we'd be a lot further along. I think we'd have fewer accidents if we were taking more time about that conversation and less time squabbling about whether or not there should be guidebooks. So I get kind of stubborn about it, but I still love talking about it, and I have to. It's going to be part of my job. Years. So, and there's a part of me that is waiting to hear an excellent argument of why we just should stop doing this. Every once in a while, because like I said, I majored in political science and sociology. I minored in philosophy. I really like thinking about this, and every once in a while, there's like a zinger of an argument. And I kind of still have the edge to hear a really good one for why we should stop making guidebooks. I really think there's an emphasis on making a responsible guidebook. I think there's a lot of guidance out there. Like I said, there's people just spray on Facebook. Ski the pencil today. Pencil is in. Go get it.
Totally.
Go get some.
Instagram, same thing.
That's really irresponsible. And there's a lot of other sites out there that I think are not taking that responsibility to a level. So I think that's very important. I think that's the discussion we should be having, is how can we as a community create a really good resource for guidance in the backcountry.
Awesome answer. I like it. Well, let's quit with that and totally, completely change the subject. But recently
we're supposed to rant about backcountry skiing and sharing the secret stashes forever.
We are not. So recently you and your family, you guys lived in South America and traveled and did all kinds of crazy stuff. So how did that come about?
Traveling is something I love and I wish I could do more of, but it takes years and years to save up for it. And so we first envisioned traveling to South America when we traveled to New Zealand, actually. Gail and I, before we had Walker, our son, we bought tickets to New Zealand. We saved up for a long time and envisioned a trip biking down from the north end, for bicycling from the north end of New Zealand to the south end of New Zealand. Not from the tip to tip. We didn't do a pure route like that. Once again, made up our own kind of route. Went from Auckland all the way to Invercargill. So over the course of 5 months. And when we were doing that, we had talked about also going to South America, maybe flying from Colorado to South America, biking around there for a bit, and going to New Zealand. And we just decided to take South America out of the scenario, and once we're done with this trip, let's start saving again, and let's do South America as a different trip. And that was 10 years until we finally got everything together to go on another trip. And so with our 8-year-old son, we left and flew down to Colombia and started in Colombia. We spent a month there busing and airplaning around. And then Ecuador. We spent a month on the coast in a small fishing village volunteering at a library for kids. A library is kind of a deceptive word. It was a house basically built out of bamboo where a bunch of kids could come and be safe and learn a little bit. These are kids who are impoverished, and this town had experienced a large earthquake a couple of years before that decimated the entire town. Quite a few people died. Quite a few people got injured. And and people were without shelter and food and water and basic necessities.
Yeah.
And as it was rebuilding, some people from Quito, the city that was about 5 hours away, came in, and they decided to help out where they could. There was no school because the school had been flattened, and kids were just getting into trouble, and there was all sorts of things that happen when suddenly no people are in school anymore.
Right. And
they just created a nice learning environment, and that's turned into an extracurricular library now that the school is reopened. So that was a wonderful meaningful time to be there, instead of like traveling and doing the tourist thing and seeing the sites. Stop.
How'd you find out about this place?
The Workaway website,
okay,
which is a morph of woofing, which is another thing for travelers, which is basically a network of people who you're connecting, people who are traveling and would like to have a different travel experience where they could maybe work in exchange for some room and board.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of people with like restaurants or small farms or libraries, volunteer nonprofits that could use labor. And they're like, I got an extra room and we'll give you a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, no problem.
Awesome.
So it's a workaway.com or .org or something like that is the connection there. So we found them through that website.
Huh.
That
Very
community.
Cool.
And they found us. I think they actually found us. So it was fun to live on the ocean. It was 3 miles south of the equator.
Wow.
It was hot and buggy, and you guys were experiencing the biggest winter of the century.
This was like a year ago at this time?
This was a year ago, almost exactly,
Yeah.
And everything was just going down in Crested Butte, and we're watching it on social media, and I was like in my shorts, slapping mosquitoes, just sweating. It's like, what am I doing? But it was a wonderful experience. From there, we went down to Peru and kind of went back into the tourist mode in Peru, went to Machu Picchu and spent time in Cusco. We were there for a month and then went down to Chile, where we bought a German camper van from a Dutchman in the Atacama Desert, which is a long story. And
just that sentence alone is awesome.
It was kind of stressful, but it was awesome. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And we then drove across the border into Argentina and drove slowly down Argentina over the course of 6 weeks, and then stopped in Bariloche right about the same time winter hit. So the north end of Patagonia, and skied and hung out. And we enrolled our boy in school, and we stayed there for a few months. We thought we were going to stay there for almost a year, and a few things drew us back, which are all positive and awesome, and we came back last fall.
So the total time was like 8 months or something like that, or 9 months? 8
months, January to August. They actually, Gail and Walker, my wife and son, came back to the States, and two friends from Crested Butte, Chris and Sarah, they had already planned on, we planned on staying longer.
Right.
And so I'd already scheduled the ski trip with Chris and Sarah, and they were like, we're coming down. And I was like, I think I gotta stay and ski. So we skied for a couple weeks, and then they went on and did a really cool trip through Patagonia. Awesome ski trip. And I came back to the States. This is another long story, but I had to fly back down to South America to sell that German camper van that I bought from a Dutchman. I sold it to some Swiss kids.
Awesome.
Who are now traveling all the way.
German, Dutch, Swiss van. American van, sorry.
Its name is Paco.
Oh, nice.
It was such a cool van. And they were driving it all the way from Ushuaia to Alaska. Ushuaia, Argentina, at the southern tip of the continent to Alaska. So they're on a big epic journey right now, and that's what this van has been doing ever since it arrived in South America, is doing laps around the Americas.
Wow, that's awesome. Do you stay in touch? It sounds like you probably stay in touch with them, or not?
We do, yeah.
Are they like going to come through Crested Butte and Gunnison or anything?
I hope so. They're invited, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, they want to, but they don't know. They're like, that's in a year. We don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
How was it doing that? I mean, usually people cruising around South America like that, they're either single or maybe a couple, but not an 8-year-old kid. So how did that work out? Traveling like that as a family? Definitely.
It was a bit intimidating for us to bring a kid. I mean, you're going like from Gunnison County into Cartagena, Colombia, and you've been there, I think, right?
Yeah, I have.
It's insane. There are so many people. There's, of course, no traffic.
Yeah.
Or no traffic regulations.
Right.
There's an extreme amount of traffic.
Right.
You're driving down what would here be a 4-lane highway, but they make it a 10-lane highway because they can just pack cars and trucks in. But it's not just cars and trucks. In between every single car is a motorcycle. Yeah. And then, like, between the motorcycles are little mopeds, and then there's also horse-drawn cars and carriages like racing along with everybody else, and a public bus system going down the center of it.
Yeah.
And people walking right through all that. It's crazy.
Uh-huh.
And of course, I've traveled around in Latin America quite a bit, and Gail did a little bit, but only in Costa Rica. So it was.
And you guys are both pretty fluent, at least.
Yeah,
too.
Gail is very fluent. I'm nearly fluent.
Yeah, nice.
Walker didn't know a word.
Okay.
But he was 8. And we were like, yeah, you got this. You'll figure it out soon. And he did. But everything was new to him, right? I mean, he'd never seen traffic like that in his life. And so that was probably one of the coolest things about the trip, was seeing the world through an 8-year-old's eyes. Once we got over some of the small anxieties we had about bringing a kid into these situations, you get over it, because it's, sure enough, when you have a little cute kid, people treat you like royalty. I mean, they like part the seas for a little cute boy. I mean, we got first in line in airports and bus stations and restaurants. And his cheeks got pinched.
It was your VIP card.
He was. It was. Yeah. Always bring a kid on traveling. There were challenges too, but it was one of the coolest parts about the whole trip, was seeing this world through him and showing him and all that. So
nice. Like, do you have plans to do another trip like that, or is that it? Get him through high school, and
we're already formulating the next one. I mean, like I said, after New Zealand, we were like, where are we going next? And like I said, it would be nice.
What is next then after the South America one?
Well, who knows? We'd like to go all sorts of places. Sometimes we talk about like driving from here to Alaska, like kind of camper vanning it, and then taking a ferry back, or vice versa. I've always wanted to like maybe buy a houseboat there that's like the floating version of a camper van, and go through the Inland Passage all the way back down to the U.S.
That'd be cool.
That would be cool. Going back to Argentina is kind of at the top of the list right now. We feel like just a few months there was not close to scratching the surface.
Yeah, so that was your favorite place of the trip, maybe?
Yeah.
Or,
oh yeah.
Really?
Oh, by far.
Ecuador
was awesome. Colombia was awesome. They were all fantastic, but Argentina is a place I could spend.
It's interesting. I hear a lot of people, and certainly in my case, like, I loved Colombia. Like, it was one of the coolest places I've ever been. Yeah. But anyway.
Agreed. It's so cool. They're all so cool.
They're all great. Yeah. I mean, I've had fun in lots of countries down in South America too. But anyway.
Colombia is unique. I thought it's so extremely different, and of course, there's so much diversity. Right? You've got the Amazon rainforest. You've got massive mountains. Yeah. Amazing rivers. Some of the warmest and most amazing people I've ever met in my life. Yeah. And all the countries, you could say kind of the same thing. I mean, Ecuador's got the same thing. And Peru is even more extreme to those ends with amazing people. Argentina is certainly a little bit more westernized. And
I was going to say it's much more westernized. I think what we found interesting in Colombia was that it was so new, because even 10 years ago, no one was going to go to Colombia because of the cocaine trade and all of that.
Exactly.
And so it felt like you were, I don't know, exploring or I don't know how to, there was a little bit of that where you're like, oh, I'm not just on the gringo trail, as people like to call it. You know what I mean? But anyway.
Yeah.
Well, let's start to wrap it up a bit. Crested Butte in the Gunnison Valley is home for you. Why do you choose to make this your home?
There's no other place like it in the world. I mean, like I just said, we traveled through New Zealand, a place that I feel like I could live. We've now traveled through all these South American countries, places where I feel like I could live. And I probably would if it wasn't for the Gunnison Valley. I love it here. And when we moved from Crested Butte to Gunnison 7 years ago, I was also building houses in Paonia. And so I was kind of like working in this triangle between working and living a little bit in Crested Butte, and then moving down to Gunnison and kind of discovering Gunnison, really. Even though we lived, in Crested Butte, there's still so much about Gunnison that we had yet to learn. Yeah. And then learning about Paonia, and I thought, what a wonderful, we have everything in this triangle of land. It's actually a fairly small square mileage, and there would be no reason ever to leave. And I really still feel that way, even though there's so many wonderful places in the world. Nothing beats home.
Where can people learn more about you and your guidebooks?
Beacon Guidebooks is the company. It's beaconguidebooks.com.
Okay, I'll put that in show notes.
Yeah. Our app is RackUp. It's RAKKUP.com, which is the maps and the books all in digital form. You can download the app for free, and then you can buy the books off of their bookshelf, and they have a lot of climbing books as well.
Cool.
So that's where they can learn. I think that's all I have right now.
Perfect. Anything else I should have asked?
Nothing I can think of.
I can think of one. I thought of one as we were doing this that I did not originally write down. How did you and I meet?
Oh, that's a good story. That's a story.
It is.
Yeah,
Let's
totally.
hear that story.
So I mean, every conversation should have Steiny in it. But a local community guy, a wonderful character, Matt Steinwand, who's one of my best friends. He came from Fort Lewis College as well. We were friends and ski buddies at Fort Lewis.
Oh, nice.
He moved to Crested Butte almost the same time that I did. Although disconnected, we didn't know that the other was moving here. It was walking down the street, walking down Elk.
That's awesome.
Actually, I was sitting at the brick oven, and he was walking down Elk, and I was like, Matt? Steinwand?
Wait.
No way, you're here too. And so a few years, later, it's an epic powder day. I think it was the winter of 07, 08, wasn't it?
Don't remember, but sounds about right.
Big, awesome winter. And there was like a sleeper day in the anthracites in the Ruby Range. There was like 15 inches of fresh, very dry snow that had fallen that only you would have known if you had been there the day before. We didn't have quite the forecasting capabilities we do now.
Sure.
And so it was like kind of no one knew unless you were tuned in. And so we got to the trailhead, and Steiny took his snowmobile off his trailer to take it for a little warm-up lap, and he went up on this is at the Kevlar Pass trailhead. He went up the hill, kind of going along a bit of a side hill, and goes across a little bit of a ditch, and the steering arm of his snowmobile breaks off, and it pulls the throttle cord out of, not out, but it pulls it on the throttle cord, and so it just takes off and bucks him off the snowmobile. He falls off, and the snowmobile is just now going across the mountainside at 40 miles an hour on its own path, its own trajectory, and we're all watching it, and I look up and I see the snowmobile just going across the mountain going, wah, just hauling, and I was like, what is happening? And then we watch it come down the contour of the mountain, following gravity, and it hits the Kevlar Pass road and just launches like 30 feet.
Must have been
into
amazing
the air.
to watch.
It was incredible to watch this thing fly through the air. I've never seen a snowmobile get that much air, even in the movies. And it lands in the Coal Creek drainage.
Yep.
What is that, like 150 feet down?
At that point, sure.
Deep, bottomless snow. And it's still going. It hits the tree. Wah! And it's still running. And we're all just like looking at it like, what just happened? And this guy had just skied past that and looked back to see this thing, flying off the side of the mountain into the creek, and he skied down to it and hit the kill button. And then skinned his way back out of there, which was very friendly of him. That was
nice
the first friendly encounter we had that day. And then we spent the rest of the day trying to get it out of there. And almost everyone who has a snowmobile or has been snowmobiling for a long time has a story of some version of this.
Sure.
Of an epic snowmobile rescue. This was ironic in that it was 100 feet from the trailhead, and we were like, it was as if we were stranded like deep in the backcountry getting this thing out. So we had like come-alongs and winches and all these things tied to little trees up across the road, trying to like hoist this thing out of a very steep hillside. And a lot of people were just like skiing, like snowmobiling past us, going up to the anthracites, like going to get a good day. And they'd be like, you guys okay? And we're like, yeah, but we could use some help. And they were like, well, we're going skiing. And you and Jeremy Wallace, right? Wagner. Jeremy Wagner came by. And you guys said, are you guys okay? And we said, nah, we could use some help. And you guys were like, well, if you guys are still here when we get back, we'll help you out.
We weren't that nice.
Yeah, exactly.
We had been out the day before. We knew what we were in for. And by the way, it was a lot more than 15 inches. But anyway.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was like, why am I even doing this? I should just go with Frank skiing. Let Steiny deal with his own snowmobile. But I wouldn't do that to a friend. But true to your words, you guys came back and we were like halfway.
I was going to say, I think you were halfway.
Like 6 hours later.
Yeah. It
was exhausting and brutal. I probably lost a lot of like disc life in my back that day. And you guys got your big powerful snowmobile down there. It wasn't your big powerful snowmobile, but Jeremy's big powerful snowmobile. Yeah. He's like, this thing will tow anything out of there, and that actually got kind of epic. We got him stuck a little bit.
We did, but I think we just kept doing it like 5 feet at a time or something like that.
Yeah, so you joined us stomping and digging, and eventually we all got it out of there. It was super cool, but it was like right before dark. Like, it was such an awful long day, but it was really cool because at one point someone had passed us. We had a cable across the Kevlar Road.
Sure.
And we had flags tied to it so that someone wouldn't just like get like clotheslined by the thing.
Right.
But it was kind of annoying, and that like people had to just like slow down their snowmobile when they saw it and just slow the snowmobile over it.
Yeah.
And this guy stops and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "Oh, clearly you can see what's happening here."
Something bad happened.
He said, "You guys need somebody up here telling people to stop." And I was like, "I know."
Do you want to do it?
And he shook his head, he called us idiots, and took off.
Oh, jeez.
And so it was really cool when the next people that came by was you guys and said, like, "We'll help you out."
Yeah.
And that's another reason why Crested Butte is home. There's some of the kindest people here.
Totally.
So yeah, that was cool. And I think we sought you down after that and bought you a beer.
Yep. I did,
Probably owe you like 100 more.
Definitely. We hung out at the Brick afterwards. It was good. So.
I've dug a lot of other people, strangers out of the snow since then to try to pay back the karma.
That's what snowmobiling is for sure. So yeah. Well, last question. Who else should I interview?
I rode the bus up. I ran into Kevin Donovan. He'd be a fun guy, a dynamic guy to interview.
Okay.
And
what? He's a builder, right?
He's a builder. Yeah. Also has been way into green building and historic renovations. He's restored a lot of the places in Gothic.
Okay. Cool.
He plays wicked bluegrass.
Cool.
Bass, guitar, banjo, mando. I think he plays a fiddle too. He's an impressive guy. He's fun to talk to.
Awesome.
Do you know Jaime Perez, drywaller?
I don't know if I do.
Gunnison?
Nope.
He used to work for Burnett. He owns his own drywall company now. If you could get him, he's got an amazing story, like classic American dream story, and he's a wonderful guy.
Okay. From
Mexico, lives in Gunnison, and has a couple outstanding kids, and yeah, I could like make you a huge list if you
totally.
wanted to.
No, those are two good ones. So, perfect. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Crested Butte Home podcast with me, Frank Consella. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast player or visit crestedbutteshome.com for all the episodes as well as real estate information. I have one more episode recorded and ready for me to edit that I did before coronavirus started to get really bad, and I prefer to record these in person. So after this next episode, I may end up needing to take a little bit of break depending on how things go. But I will definitely be back with one more episode after this, and then we'll just have to take it day by day, if not hour by hour. Either way, I will definitely be back with some episodes. So stay tuned and subscribe, and I'll be with you soon.